is Noah, the famous Noah and the Ark. And we could all, I think, relate this year to Noah being confined to the Ark for an entire year, not leaving the Ark, being surrounded by floods of water all around us, and animals squawking, barking, roaring, and feeding, making sure to feed everybody all day. So this week's Torah portion is Noah. And my father-in-law always used to say, what was Noah's secret to survival? How did he survive 100 entire year in the Ark? And 40 days and 40 nights of rain. He had a good wife, Naamah. It was his wonderful wife who kept the sanity and the equilibrium in the Ark. So kudos to all the women who keep our equilibrium in our homes. So the Torah portion starts off very interesting, that Noah was Ish Tam, good morning, Carrie, a righteous man, a tzaddik, the word tzaddik, but it ends off b'dairaisa in his generation. So the commentaries jump in and say, had Noah lived in the time of Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob, he wouldn't be considered such a great guy. Compared to his people who were corrupt and immoral and unethical, he was a tzaddik. Now, I think it's a little bit un-Jewish of our commentaries to say that, if I may say. You know, we don't usually criticize and say, had he lived then, he would be nothing. So what exactly are they saying? So I saw a beautiful insight from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, which really resonated with me. I hope it will resonate with you, is it's actually not a negative comment. It's saying, look how a guy, an ordinary Noah, transformed the world. He saved the world from destruction. Maybe he didn't influence others. He only went into the Ark, remember, with his own family and the animal kingdom. Unlike Abraham, it says, left Mesopotamia with his entire crew of people who he influenced to follow monotheism, one God. So Noah really didn't affect his generation. He wasn't able to get his community on board, literally. They did not choose to leave their corrupt ways. But because of his righteousness, the world was saved. So the Rebbe emphasizes that who is a true hero? The simple, ordinary man or woman can be the hero of the generation, can save an entire world. You don't have to be a holy roller. You don't have to be the Avram or the Sarah, a matriarch or patriarch. Each and every one of us can be a Noah. When opportunity presents itself and we can do the right thing and build the ark, whether it's a metaphorical ark or a literal ark, we should always forge forward. Look, think of the Forrest Gump movie. An ordinary fellow does extraordinary things. So by saying b'dairaisa in his generation, each and every one of us can impact, can be a hero. There's no criteria to being a hero, to being impactful. Everyone can be a Noah. So it's a really, really beautiful concept, I think, how we have to look at ourselves differently in a sense. So as we open up the Torah portion and move forward, does anybody want to add anything? Do you want to share your heroic acts? Anybody? Something you're proud of, or how you are showed a characteristic?
For the picture?
I don't have a picture up. I'm not on video.
Okay, Ellen, where do you live in Beit Shemesh?
In Nofei Shemesh.
Okay. So it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. 120 years he builds the ark, hoping people will say, what are you doing? What's going on? And Noah shares the world is going to be destroyed if we don't repent, and the people don't listen. And he gets onto the ark, and God tells him, take 7 pairs of kosher, pure animals, and 2 pairs, 1 pair, a male and a female, of the not pure animals, not pure, lo tame, lo tahar. The Torah uses the terminology, instead of saying impure animals, the Torah says not pure. So the question is, why doesn't the Torah just say tame? Take 7 pairs of pure animals, tahar, and 2 tame, impure animals. It says not pure, which is the opposite of pure. And this is another interesting thing I saw, is that the language God uses, the language Torah uses, is to teach us how to speak with sensitivity, with refinement. Instead of saying you're a bad person, say, you know, you're not so good. Oh, she's so ugly. She's not so beautiful. Person is not so refined. And instead of saying they're coarse, they're this. How we speak about something is very, very important. So by the Torah saying, take 7 sets of pure animals and 1 set or 1 pair of not pure animals, instead of saying impure, tamei, the Torah is sending us a message. But one more little interesting insight here. Hundreds of times the Torah talks about tamei and uses the word impure, tamei, tamei, tamei. You come in contact with a dead person, you're tamei. You're a leper, you're tamei. So why now suddenly is the Torah becoming lily pure on us and using proper language? So the answer is, when the Torah is telling us halacha, Jewish law, the Torah uses very explicit terms, tamei, impure, tahar, pure. It's the law. But when the Torah is relating a story, the story of Noah, and all the stories in the Torah uses more refined language because it's a story. And when a story is repeated, it should be repeated in a refined way. 7 sets of pure animals and 1 set of not pure animals, which is impure. Mm-hmm. So I remember when cancer unfortunately became a very, very rampant in the world, the Rebbe used to call it that illness. The Rebbe never said, oh, the person had cancer. The Rebbe would say, call it that illness, not to even say the word, which was a terrible disease. It still is. So you'll hear many people call cancer yena machle, that disease. And another beautiful thing, when they were building one of the hospitals in Israel, and they call it Beit Cholim. How do you say hospital in Hebrew? The house of ill, the house of the sick. The Rebbe said, don't call it the house of the sick. Call it Beit Rofim, the house of healing. Even how you look at things and speak about them affects it. You walk in a hospital, it's the house of healing. It's a house where people get better, not the house, oh, they're all sick. And I don't have time to tell the story, but if you remember the beautiful, poignant story, it's such a gorgeous story, I will tell it one day. They brought a group of wounded soldiers, paraplegics, seriously wounded Israeli soldiers to the United States. They gave them a free trip. And the highlight of the trip was to visit the Rebbe to pray the afternoon service. And the Rebbe knew they were in the building, in the synagogue. So the Rebbe said, can I speak to them? And the Rebbe was told, these are the wounded of Israel, the wounded. So the Rebbe, the first thing the Rebbe said, first of all, I want to correct your sergeant. You are not the wounded of Israel. You are the mitsuyanim of Israel. You are the perfect ones of Israel because you gave your lives, your bodies for the country. You are not the wounded. You are the perfect men of Israel. And one of the soldiers who writes this whole article, which is very lengthy, he writes, He writes in the article that it was the Rebbe's way the Rebbe looked at him, and not as a disabled person, but as a perfect and whole person, the Mitsuyanim. The Rebbe said, you are not the disabled, you are the Mitsuyanim, you are the perfect ones of Israel. So how we speak, you say it's only a word. The Torah could have said impure animals, tamei. And you'd say, yeah, they're impure. The Torah says not pure. To show us every word does matter. Because how we speak really affects us. And also, one more cute tidbit, when you go to a cemetery, how do you call a cemetery? In Hebrew, Beis Almin, the house of eternity, or Beis HaChaim, the house of the living. Because again, when someone passes away, we don't say they're dead, they're gone forever. Their memories are eternal. Their souls are eternal. So again, the language is one of a positive connotation. Even though, yes, cemetery is a sad place, but it's a place also that shows us what our lives are about. Our lives are eternal because our souls are eternal. Does anybody want to add anything? The plot thickens, by the way, girls. The plot thickens.
Our soul is eternal forever.
Forever. Most of us are really also reincarnations.
Right, I believe that.
Yeah. Sometimes you'll have serendipity because your soul was there, has been there, experienced it before. Did it ever happen to you?
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
I've been here before, but you haven't been here before physically.
Or you knew that person before like you felt like you knew them for your whole life, or you just met them.
Yes. Or even once happened to me, I came to a place and I remembered the place, I think even in a dream.
Right.
I've been there. So it happens if you're sensitive to it. Some people are not sensitive.
Very sensitive to it.
Right? Anybody else felt that they were another person in another time? One of my friends dresses very vintage, very Elizabethan, and she claims she's from the medieval times. And I always joke with her, I said, I could tell. Heard if you put on a little contemporary clothes, come, we'll go shopping, I'll take you to Bloomingdale's. But anyway.
She's not a bad dresser. She's just not a good dresser.
Exactly. A different era of dressing. So there's so many beautiful stories in Noah. It's so interesting. With the Noah's Ark is, they even have a Little Tikes toys, Noah's Ark. Noah's Ark is like across the board, beautiful tale. We tell children, there's fairy tales about Noah's Ark. So let's move on. So it's raining for 40 days and 40 nights. Think about it. And now the rain subsides. And actually, they didn't leave the ark for an entire year because though the rain stopped, the waters did not go down for many, many months. The waters stayed, roaring waters, like thinking you're middle of the ocean. Till the water subsided and the dry land reappeared was a year in the ark. Think about it. And I think, like we said before, we can really relate to that. So now, how does Noah know? When can I leave the ark? So he sends out a raven. He takes a raven, he sends out this bird. If the bird doesn't come back, it means the bird landed on dry land and now it's safe to go out. But the raven comes back. So now Noah sends out a dove. And the dove comes back. Everybody knows the famous way. No, first the dove leaves, good morning, Margaret, comes back.
What's going on?
7 days later, he sends the dove again. And the dove comes back with the famous, everybody?
Olive branch.
Olive branch. You always see it on greeting cards and on logos. But it's still not dry land. He brought an olive branch, but how does he know that all the rain subsided. So 7 days later, he sends the dove again, and the dove doesn't come back. He now knows it's safe to leave the ark. So it's a very, very beautiful insight, that I love about the story. First of all, why does he send a raven or a dove? Both of these are not the fastest, most productive birds, the Torah says. There are more birds, better birds equipped to handle the job. Faster, swifter. And the second question, if he's sending the raven, stick to the raven. Why are you going now switching to doves? Or you want to use a dove, don't use the raven. So we spoke a little bit about the raven and dove analogy last week when we spoke about how Adam and Chava learned how to bury their son and how to move forward. That the raven is not a nice animal. It's a severe animal. It's an animal that deserts his young. Remember? We spoke about it. The dove is known as white, pure, loving, symbol of peace. It's a kosher bird. Raven is not even a kosher bird. So when Noah sees that the world is destroyed because of corruption, what does he say? The new world must be built with judgment, with strength, with severity. We cannot allow the new population to now fall to the side, become corrupt again. So when we come out of this ark, we are going to set up a tight system of judgment, principles, foundations. We're going to be tough here. Symbolic of a raven. So God says, no, 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 no. The raven, the approach of aggression, severity, judgment is not the way to build a world. A world must be built on the foundation of love. Dove. Love. Yes, you need discipline. You cannot let people run amok. You can't say we don't need police, we don't need courts of justice, we don't need a system. You need a system. But the world must be built on the foundation of goodness and kindness and light, tempered with discipline. So when Noah wants to take the raven and say, this is the approach, God says, no, you will not leave the ark until we establish that the dove approach is the way to build a world. So when he sends the dove is the one that comes back and says, yes, dry land, you can go out. The world must be built on kindness. So also when with children, with students, with relationships, love should be the first approach. Kill them with kindness. You always use positive. That doesn't mean you can never discipline, doesn't mean you can't put your foot down, but our first line of defense has to be love, goodness, and kindness. If that doesn't work, we'll worry later what to do next. What do they call it? Positive reinforcement. How do you call it when you use reverse psychology? Whenever I try it, my kids say, Ma, you using reverse psychology on me? It reminds me the first year I got married. I was a very mama and papa's baby kid. So I didn't know the first Passover, do I have to go to my husband's family for the Seders in Flatbush, which means we have to sleep there because it's not walking distance, or can I really stay with my mother and father? So I didn't want to sound mean. So I say to my husband, honey, so Passover is coming. Would you like to go to your parents, maybe? So my husband looks at me and he says, no. I think we should go to your parents the first year. And I'm like, you sure? 'Cause I don't really mind. I shouldn't have said that. We'll go to your parents. So reverse psychology does work. And I called my mother. I said, no, thank God. It worked. He said, we're coming to you. Because I didn't want to be the pushy wife, the first Passover. Well, my mother was is the better cook, so that was good. So going back to that, the world must be built on goodness and kindness. And they go off the ark, they're on dry land, and God shows Noah the first rainbow of civilization. There has never been a rainbow ever in the world till Noah leaves the ark. So though the Kabbalah says that God created everything during the 7 days of creation, not everything was revealed till later on in the world. So God, let's say, created Saturn, Mars, Venus. However, doesn't mean that Adam and Eve right away saw Mars. It means that it was created, but some things emerged later as we discovered them. So God created the rainbow by the 7 days of creation, 6 days of creation, but this is the first time the rainbow appears in the world. And God says to Noah, the rainbow is a symbol and covenant that I make with mankind, that I will never ever destroy the world again. Instead, I will show you a rainbow. So now the obvious questions. Anybody have any questions about this? Unmute yourself if you want to ask. Why a rainbow? Why is a rainbow a symbol that I'll never destroy the world again?
Thank you very much.
It's very,
Go ahead.
well, I always, can I tell you, every time I see a rainbow, it's a sign that he's with you. I don't, it's a double-edged sword, the rainbow, right? Isn't it like a sign to, but I just want to tell you one story.
Go
When I
ahead.
found out I was having twins, I saw a double rainbow, a beautiful one. And it was in St. Martin. I'll never forget it. And I knew it was going to be okay. Yet I was like freaking out and in pain. But yet I knew it was like Hashem. It was a very weird symbolic, and I remember it from Noah. So I'm curious, why again the rainbow? He sends a rainbow. Why? I forgot.
I'm asking everybody. And also, I want to tell you, based on what Kim said, when I was growing up, you know, the teachers didn't go into Kabbalah. When you're little, they tell you. We were told if you see a rainbow, it means the world has to be destroyed. But the teachers got it all wrong. That's not what it means. It's not a bad sign. It's not a sign, oh, hi guys, you see a rainbow? Yeah, we really deserve a flood. Because Kim just said she saw a rainbow. It was a sign of her twins, a double rainbow. Uh-oh, I saw a double rainbow a few days ago. I'm just joking. Honey, did you see a double rainbow in your twins?
Was Connie with you?
I feel like the rainbow is a sign that Hashem is with us, and it's supposed to bring beauty, but yet it's a miracle, and we're supposed to like look for these miracles or something, and you know, always know he's with us. I don't know, but there's something like we'll never do it again. After the flood, he said he'll never do it again, right, Freda?
Destroy the world again.
He'll never
With the
destroy the world
flood.
again.
The flood, Connie, well said, right.
Right.
You don't know.
Okay, at least we won't have a flood.
Okay, so we know we're okay. You don't have to get, you know, remember Hurricane Katrina or something, not the one in Florida 2 years ago? So my daughter shows me, she moved into her sister-in-law's house, which is like hurricane protected in some island in Florida, and she shows me a giant rowboat. And I'm like, yeah, that's gonna save you from a tornado. Yeah, Shayna, the rowboat. You're all gonna pile in, you know. So this is a beautiful Kabbalistic insight I read. I love it. The rainbow illustrated the new world reality, the transformation of the universe. So I looked up online today. What is a rainbow? Scientifically, a rainbow is like this. Drops of moisture go into the atmosphere. They refract the light of the sun, and they bring forth this beautiful rainbow of colors. That's what a rainbow is. It's droplets of moisture in the air that are refracting the light of the sun. But Hasidus, Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah says, so why wasn't there a rainbow before the flood? because the world had a different makeup. And I'll use a few examples. Before the era of the flood, before the generation of the flood, the way the universe was, that was like a teacher teaching students. A teacher is teaching a class of students. We can absorb the knowledge, but the minute the teacher leaves, there is no give back. There is no creative thinking. What's a good teacher? A teacher gives you information and you build on that information. There's creative practice. The mission of a teacher is to get the students to think on their own, to leave the class and say, you know, I'm going to build on that knowledge. I'm going to add to that knowledge. So before the flood, when the divine light came down and we were in the aura of God and we listened to God's mitzvahs and we followed the rules of the world, everything was perfect. But the minute we stepped out of God's classroom and we became corrupt, the generation, and they disconnected them from the light, stopped shining down on them. So they were able always to absorb God's light, but the minute they stepped away, that was gone. They couldn't reconnect. The line was cut, the connection was cut. There's no way to reconnect. There was moisture in the air, but it cannot refract the light of the sun. It stayed where it was. The water stayed below, and the waters in the heavens stayed above. Nothing mixed. After the flood, God created a new reality for us. That even when we drift away, when we leave God's light, when we leave the classroom, when we want nothing to do with anything related to God, we can always come back. We can always reach back and reconnect ourselves. Before, it was a divine gift. You're staying close to God, you're going to get my light. You disconnect yourself, goodbye. If I want to reconnect with you, I will, but otherwise you have no way to come back on your own. It has to be the divine reaching out to you, not the other way around. Now, God is telling Noah, the symbol of the rainbow is the new reality. Now, no matter how far a person drifts away from the divine light, from the divine message, from godliness, from their mission, from their source, you always have the ability to rise up and reconnect and come back.
Robertson, may I add something to that?
Yes, please.
I'll start scientifically. White light is the presence of all of the colors.
Very nice.
Of course, there's no explanation of what is darkness other than the absence of light. That's the only definition for darkness, the absence of light. So if all the colors merged, become the white light. And you're going to think I'm crazy, but I had a vision on Shabbos Yom Kippur. I was sitting.
Go ahead.
Can I continue?
Yeah, yes. Please.
So I've been, in the last few years, I've been studying a lot more since I retired. I've actually taught a couple of your daughters. And I've been reading many rabbis who have a little different slant on things, you know, from Hasidic to this to that, all of them. And I'm trying to integrate what I learn, you know, a pitch from here and a pitch of, and I see overlaps and I see connections. And I'm saying, what is the truth? How am I going to find the truth if there's such a thing that we are even allowed to find? And I'm sitting in the yard before Mincha, and the sun is beautiful and the trees are beautiful. And I had this vision. Every one of the Rabbanim that I've been studying, one is holding a different color of the rainbow. And then they say to me, I get this thing, they're telling me, braid it all together. And and you'll get the white lights. You'll see what Hashem wants to tell you. And so I'm a poet also. So I wrote a poem called Braiding Rainbows. But it was like each one of the Rebbe's learnings and teachings and experiences and their lives in the different countries of Europe and the different, all of these different things. And they're saying to me, braid it all together, all of these colors of the rainbow. You have to braid them all together and you'll find the white. I needed to tell that to somebody.
No, I think it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful because yesh sheva pe'anim la'Torah. There's seven, it says there's 7 faces to the Torah. There's even more because Torah is not single dimensional, it's multidimensional. And that's why it's eternal. And it's multidimensional because it's God's infinite wisdom. If you and I wrote a book, you know, how many times can you read Harry Potter, which is like a bestseller, everyone loved it. Once, the Torah you can read for all eternity and still learn new. And the proof is in the pudding. The Rebbe, Lubavitcher Rebbe, for example, spoke every Shabbos for 4 or 5 hours, expounding on the Torah portion, and every time was a new idea, a new interpretation, an explanation of Rashi, commentaries, insights, books and books, Svarim and Svarim, libraries and libraries of Kabbalistic, Hasidic commentary insights to Torah. So, Professor Shulman, very beautiful insight, beautiful. And look how God has ways of talking to people. Kim saw a double rainbow. Professor Shulman saw an answer in the rainbow. Beautiful, really. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. Does anybody have any questions or additional insights they want to share? Please don't be shy. Everyone loves hearing each other's insights. That's what makes it's supposed to be conversation and discussion.
I just wanted to add something nice that I read yesterday. That after our rainstorms, we see that rainbow, and that's like the rainbow.
Go to another part of go ahead, because you're cut off. Go ahead, start again.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Now we can.
So I saw this yesterday. After our rainstorms, we see a rainbow. So after things are, sometimes crazy in our life, or we're going through a traumatic time, or it's stressful, or whatever it is, after that, that's when we see a rainbow. And that's when it happens. When do you see a rainbow? After a rainstorm, according, in nature. So it's nice. It gives you hope. That's
exactly. It just to underline the point one more time that Chassidus says that the rainbow shows the reality that we can always renew and rebuild. It's a symbol of renewal and rebuilding. We can always go back because God gave us that new energy after the destruction of the flood. So when you feel sometimes it's hopeless, I can never go back, I can never reconnect, you can always renew and reconnect once again. In small ways and in big ways. Not only, sometimes we always think of everything as the big picture, but it's also the small picture. We do need to sweat the small things in our personal lives sometimes, because I always say this, I'll say one more time, it's always the small things that create the chaos. Why didn't you pick up my cleaners? I have to tell you 10 times now I don't have my dress for the event. Where are my car keys? Can you return them so I don't get stuck? It's always the small things that create the chaos in our lives, and then the small things that also create the beautiful moments, Like one friend of mine tells me she always puts her husband a little love note in his attaché case before he goes to work. And he opens it up and he calls her, honey, I got your note, I love it. It's little things that really make the big difference in our lives. So in Judaism, it is the small little things that most people don't realize. They always think, oh, we go big or don't go at all. But only time that applies is diamonds, girls. That's my little joke. Okay. So it's a beautiful thing.
I have
Go
a
ahead.
comment.
One other thing about the rainbow is that it connects two sides. It doesn't, if you see the whole rainbow, it's not like it's broken off, but it's almost like balances, or it connects, or has that sort of feeling too. Yeah.
Symmetry. There's a symmetry, an arch, a symmetry. Right, that's a beautiful thing. So now, now we look at the rainbow from a whole different perspective. It's a sign of renewal, rebirth, the ability to get back to where we are meant to be. And right before, by the way, God tells Noah, say min hateva, go out of the ark, time to go out. Now, let me ask you, a year you're sitting in an ark, do you really need to be told to go out? You run. So Hasidus has a beautiful, interesting insight that Teva also not only means ark, it means words, letters. The year that Noah sat in the ark was in a very confined, but also protected. He was protected. He was protected from the rains, the storm, hunger, survival. He was taken care of in the ark. In life, sometimes we have to be told, now's the time to spread your wings. Now's the time to go out. So when we're young, we learn letters, we learn Torah, we learn words. But God says there's also time to go out of those words. Take the words, take the lessons, take the study and apply it. You cannot sit in your ark. You cannot sit in a secluded, confined area your whole life, afraid to venture forth. Because the whole purpose of Teva, of letters, of Torah, of learning, is to go out of the ark. Utilize that knowledge, live in the real world. Noah is told, go out, now you have to live in the real world again. You have to rebuild the world. So we study Torah, we learn, and sometimes it's scary. People feel like, I don't want to mingle with the world. But the whole purpose is to be in the world with the letters of Torah. So we have to take those letters, Teva meaning letters, the lessons, and go out and apply it in our lives every moment. That's why God says to Noah, go out, min hateva, which is really the quintessential message to all of us, go out. Maybe this is the reason that the Lubavitcher Rebbe sent his emissaries all over the world. Go out. It's nice to sit in yeshiva. People always ask me, Freda, don't you feel bad? You don't live in Crown Heights near your parents, near the synagogues, near the mikvahs, the kosher food, the pizza shops. I said, no, because the purpose is to go out. If you want to fulfill your mission, sometimes you have to go out of your little comfy, cozy, one of my aunts grew up in Borough Park. So she didn't understand always the concept of outreach. So she said, Freda, you're moving to Westport, Connecticut, and there's no pizza shops, kosher pizza shops? And I'm like, Auntie, I don't want to say which one, ever heard of frozen pizza? I said to her, and she laughed. So say means you have to sometimes go out. Not sometimes, always. Always have to go out. So this is what God is telling each and every one of us. Time to go out. Utilize what you learn, utilize your talents and your energies, and share it, spread it, and so on. So sorry, Margaret, were you saying something? Oh, okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, I was going to say before, it's interesting. The rainbow is a symbol of the LBGT community. And I look at it as being tolerant to other people who are different. And it's interesting how just the rainbow also causes everyone to stop what they're doing. It's like, come look at the rainbow. And it kind of gives you a moment to reflect, and I always love them. So
Yeah, the rainbow is a beautiful symbol. It is a symbol of, tolerance. And we need more tolerance in our world, by the way.
yes, we do.
We do need more tolerance in our world. And Diane, that's what God is telling Noah. Build the world with love. You're not going to build the world with severity, judgment, and exclusion and discrimination.
Love that.
It's all based in Torah. You know, this is the way of our Torah and of our world and of humanity, basically.
I've missed you.
So now we're going to come, if no one has anything to add, to a very controversial story in Noah. Very controversial story. I'm going to read it actually from the text because it's very rich in the text. So now Noah, his 3 sons, his wife Naamah, and the animals all come out and they're told to multiply. Come on, rebuild this universe, rebuild this world. And Noah is a farmer. Agriculture is his specialty. He farms. He plants a vineyard. Who doesn't want a nice cup of good wine? And his grapes grow. He makes wine. He drinks. He becomes intoxicated. The Torah tells us he becomes drunk. And now let's see what happens. He drank of the wine, became drunk, and uncovered himself in his tent. Cham, one of his sons, publicly relates the incident to his 2 brothers. So there's 3 brothers, Shem, Cham, Yafes. Cham sees what happens to his father, and he runs to reveal the shame of his father to his brothers. So look what happens now. Shem and Yafes took a garment and placed it on both of their shoulders. So envision the story. The 2 other sons take a garment and they place it on their shoulders, their father's garment. They walk backwards into the tent and cover their father's nakedness. Even when they turned around to put the garment on him, the Torah says, their faces were turned backwards. And the passage ends off, so they did not see their father's nakedness. So let me reiterate what happens here. Noah gets drunk. He's lying uncovered in his tent. His son Cham comes into the tent, sees the scene before him, and runs out and tells his brothers, look, Dad is lying drunk in his tent, uncovered. The 2 brothers react in a totally different way. They take the father's garment. They walk in backwards, obviously backwards, because you can't, if you're going like this behind me, I don't see you, obviously. And not only that, when they get closer to their father's bed, the Torah emphasizes that they turn their heads away, their faces away, while they put the garment over their father. And the passage reiterates, seemingly unnecessarily, and they did not see their father's nakedness. And now the Baal Shem Tov and Kabbalah and Hasidus has a magnificent analysis and interpretation of what's going on over here. So let's first ask a few questions. Anybody have any questions on the story? Cham sees his father. Why doesn't he cover his father? Why doesn't he grab a garment and cover his father? Right? He runs out to tell his brothers, hey, look at Dad. Why does the pasuk, the passage, have to say 3 times? If they walked in backwards, it's obviously their faces were turned away. Their faces are facing that way. Why does the Torah have to say they walked in backwards? They turned their faces as not to see. And then the passage makes sure to sum it up. They did not see their father's nakedness. A little bit repetitive. And especially since we always say that the Torah does not repeat. Everything is concise. Every letter is accounted for. Every passage is accounted for. So does anybody have any insight into this? Does anybody want to share? And remember, there's no wrong answer. Well, sometimes there is, but you know what I mean? So I have a, yes, go ahead.
I was reading from Rabbi Sachs, and the point he was trying to make was that this situation of him being drunk and being naked shouldn't detract from what he had done previously. Shouldn't take away from what he did up until that point and be like an embarrassment.
Just to highlight that, Carrie, didn't he deserve to have a little l'chaim? Come on.
Yeah, sure.
After 120 years to build an ark. Then a full year in the ark. He finally gets out. A little l'chaim, doesn't he deserve a cup of vodka here? So we empathize with him. He's a human being. And obviously the story is in the Torah. It's here to teach us a magnificent insight, many insights, but I'm going to share something that I saw and read. And the Baal Shem Tov, founder of the Hasidic movement, master of the good name, Israel Baal Shem Tov, speaks about the concept that every person, how we look at things, it is a mirror of who we are. How we view things, how we see things in our lives is a reflection of who we are. So in other words, you put on your lipstick, you know how it gets on your teeth sometimes, and you go over to somebody and they start licking, they're trying to show you there's lipstick on your teeth. If you go to a mirror, the mirror can only reflect what's truly on your face. So the lipstick on your teeth will be in the mirror too. The mirror does not change what you are. If there's a stain of coffee on your new white shirt, which always happens to me, I get dressed, I slurp my coffee, I have to change. The mirror is not going to show you a clean white shirt when you spilled coffee on your shirt. The mirror can only reflect back what you are, what you see. That is who you are. Who you are will always reflect exactly what you see, will always reflect back who you truly are. It does not deviate. So now let's go back another example. My brother told me this story. He's a rabbi. Two people came to him. They work in a company. And both of them came to him at different times saying that there's theft by one of their fellow co-workers. So one fellow comes to my brother and says, he's a gun, if he's a thief, he's a lowlife, how could he do this? This is horrible, this is terrible. I feel like, and he's outraged, and his reaction is very virile, whatever, very, very aggressive. I'm gonna get him. And then the second guy, same company, and they don't know about each other, comes to my brother and says, Rabbi, I have a problem I want to discuss with you. There's a fellow employee who is robbing our boss and also doing illegal business in the business. And I'm wondering how to deal with it. Should I go to the boss? Or is my responsibility to go to the person first? Or do I keep quiet? Because it's tattletaling, it's Lashon Hara. How should I deal with this? Look at the two different people. One has a very aggressive reaction, and one has a more reaction of responsibility and moral obligation. So Baal Shem Tov, based on what the Baal Shem Tov says, is that in essence, how each person reacts to situations in their lives, good or bad situations, is really bringing out something deep within you. You may not even know it in your deep subconscious of something that you are in yourself. Maybe you're jealous, envious, wish you would have been the one to think of that scheme. Maybe the reaction is so aggressive is because really you're seeing in yourself something that you see in that fellow. And you see it all the time, by the way. 2 women, 2 men, 2 children are in a place, something happens. One person sees everything from a positive. Oh, we have a flat tire, good, we have more time to sit and chat till AAA comes. Another person, flat tire, I'll be late, this is horrible, terrible. Why didn't you check the tires? Why couldn't you make sure we had air? Why didn't you pull over when I told you? When is the AAA gonna come? So people react based on who they are. And sometimes you don't even realize it because it's deep, deep, deep in your subconscious. Someone will say, why, are you feeling a little jealous? No, I'm me jealous? No, that guy's a ganef. That person's a thief. She's a lowlife. You won't admit that subconsciously something triggered. There's a trigger. Why did you have such a vehement reaction? Because it's a trigger. Why did the person have a different reaction of responsibility? What can I do? Because they have a different, it's a different reflection of who they are. So going back now to the story, so Cham sees his father undressed, drunk, intoxicated, in a shameful situation. He doesn't cover his father. He runs to announce it to his brothers. That's who he is. There's something in him. That sight triggered something in Cham, we don't know what. Something in Cham. It triggers a reaction in Cham that he ran to tell his brothers and didn't feel a responsibility to cover his father. The other 2 brothers hear this from their brother and they go, wow, this is terrible. What can we do? Our father has been shamed. Quick. They grab a garment and they make sure to do it in the most modest, delicate, sensitive way. So the Torah highlights, they walked in backwards, they turned their faces away when they covered him, and they did not see their father's nakedness. You see what you want to see. You look at life at how you are. If you see everything negative, 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 nakedness, shamefulness, everyone's out to get me, you have to see what's going on with you, that you are seeing everything like that. Is it your insecurities, or is it really everyone out to get you? Or when you see something happening, you say, my gosh, what can I do to help that person? They're in such a shameful, compromised situation. I feel bad for them. Let me think what we could do to help that person or that family or that child. So how we react to everything that we see is a reflection of really, really how we look at ourselves. This is what Chassidus, based on the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, teach us. Now, after this happens, and then we'll talk a little bit more about this. I want to end off the story. Noah wakes up and he's told that his son shamed him. His son announced it. So Noah banishes Cham, and the next generations of Shem is given the mitzvah of talit, of a talus with tzitzis. Very nice. But Kabbalah asks, why a talus? Why is that the reward? For shame, I can think of a better reward, maybe a few $1 million, you know? Well, why is the mitzvah of talus given to all Jews, but highlighted, given to shame? Why is that the mitzvah?
Is it because you should always be reminded and have before you all the things that you should be doing that are right?
Excellent, because the whole concept of tzitzit, as the passage says, what does it say in Shema? Why do we, when we wear the tzitzis, and you will see God and remember all the mitzvahs. So the reason we have the mitzvah, the men have the mitzvah of the talus, and times you'll see men wear it under their shirts, the 4 fringe garment, the tzitzis. called the small tallis. So in some customs, a boy's bar mitzvah, they put on a tallit when they pray. And some customs, like in my family, they put it on only after they get married. But when the boys turn 3, the custom in my family and many, most families, they wear the tzitzit under the shirt. And the tzitzit and the knots altogether is 613, if you count all the strings and the knots together. But if you think of a tallis, what does the tallis do? It covers you. If you notice, when you get called up to the Torah, they cover their face. When the blessing of the Kohanim, the tallis covers over the face. So the tallis is really a covering. So why is that the reward for shame? And also, tallis is covering over. Isn't the point to see things from a better perspective? Even tzitzit means to see. So what the message here is you have to know what to see and how to see it. It's important to see. You can't live your life with blinders. You can't say, I'm not seeing it, I'm not getting involved, I don't want to know about it, it's not for me to get involved. No, it's important for us to take a stand. It's important for us to get involved. But it's important to take the right approach, the right way of seeing things. So the tallit is symbolic of seeing, but seeing it the right way. Taking responsibility as opposed to condemning. Seeing it from the proper perspective. That's why that's the reward for Shem, the tallis. Tzitz means to see. He saw things with the right approach. What can I do to mitigate the shame of my father? Cover him over. And later on, we could discuss what happened. So this teaches us such a beautiful insight that now after I was studying this, I was thinking to myself, boy, I better change my attitude sometimes. Because sometimes I see something and I'm like so upset about it. Yeah, maybe it's because I'm seeing myself, which I never thought of. I always thought, oh yeah, I'm such a good judge here. I should judge myself better. But this is what the story teaches us. It's so beautiful that the Torah has such magnificent insights into our lives and how we see ourselves. Does anybody want to add anything or ask any questions or? So we could talk about the story of Babel for a few more minutes. We have like a few more minutes, or I could share with you the story of the disabled soldiers. Which would you prefer? Being we spoke about using language. I'll share the story of the disabled soldiers. It'll highlight the concept of how we talk to people and how we view people. So like I mentioned, in an Israeli publication, a secular publication, this veteran who became a paraplegic in the war, in I think the 6-day war, he wrote this beautiful article about his life. So he was wounded in a tank attack during the 6-day war. A young man came back, a paraplegic, and he basically gave up on life. And he's writing all this in Hebrew in this article. No matter what his parents tried to get him to do, he refused. He literally sat all day looking out the window, watching everyone's lives go on. His best friend getting married, having children, and there's no life for me, he thought to himself. The Israeli government had a new plan, a project. They were giving free trips to the United States to their disabled soldiers. So they called him up, they go, you wanna go? He had nothing else to do. He said, I'll go along. They took him to the Statue of Liberty and at that time, the Twin Towers. And he said it was as if they took him on down the street. Nothing touched him. He didn't care about anything. His life was over. He only went to kill time. The last day of the trip, they took all the disabled soldiers to 770, the Lubavitcher Rebbe synagogue, to the afternoon prayer. And they told the Rebbe that the group of soldiers were going to pray with the Rebbe's minyan. And the Rebbe asked, like I mentioned before, the sergeant of arms, if he could say a few words to the soldiers before they left. And the sergeant said, oh, wow, what an honor. So the Rebbe spoke in Hebrew. And he said, he started off with the words which I mentioned. I was told that the disabled soldiers of Israel are coming here today. But I want to correct your sergeant. You are the perfect Mitsuyanim, the Rebbe said, soldiers of Israel. You are the perfect soldiers of Israel. And when he heard that, he felt a little happier that moment. Then the Rebbe went over to every soldier in wheelchair, on crutches, and he gave every soldier $1. And every soldier, he said something else. To one soldier, he says, refuah shlema, speedy recovery. To another soldier, he said, regards to your appearance. Another soldier, he said this. Another soldier, he said that. Then he comes over to this fellow who's in the wheelchair. And the Rebbe bends down and looks at him with his beautiful blue eyes. And he says to him 2 words that changed his life. Toda Rabba. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. He said he doesn't know what happened, but that minute that he heard Toda Rabba, he felt a darkness was exorcised. He said he has no other way of describing it, exorcised from him. And he felt a happiness descend, and he smiled at the Rebbe. He hadn't smiled in years since his wound, since his accident, since whatever, the attack. And the Rebbe handed him $1. And he analyzed, he writes, what happened to him. He said, I was 18 years old. I was sent to the front lines. I was in an explosion and I became a paraplegic. I couldn't walk anymore. I gave my life and limb for my country. And they put me in the hospital and they rehabilitated me. And they gave me a pension. But you know what? No one said to me, Moshe, Toda Lecha. Thank you for sacrificing yourself for your people, for your country. The 2 words I needed to hear, I didn't hear. No one said to me the 2 words I needed to hear to go on with my life. No one thanked me. The Rebbe looked at me and saw my soul and saw what I needed to hear. And that's what saved my life. So sometimes how we say something, what we say, can transform a person forever. A Rebbe knows what to say. But I said to myself, it doesn't hurt me, and this is my own personal thing, is think sometimes what you could say to a person that can have an impact on them in a very beautiful, positive way. Sometimes it's just thank you. Just thank you. 2 words. The Rebbe knew that, knew what he needed to hear. And he ends off the article, he writes, Toda la Rebbe. Thank you, Rebbe. Thank you, Rebbe. So this ties in, I think, to how we word things, how the Torah is so careful, not pure. Something happens, you don't have to say it's terrible, it's bad. Say not so good. My grandmother was ill before she died. And I say, Baba, was machst du? How are you? She says, Baruch Hashem, could be better. And she was very ill. She never said, oh, it's terrible. She always said, Baruch Hashem, thank God. She started off, Ken sein besser, could be better. She knew because she was a student of the Rebbe. She always worded things properly. So what can I say today that can impact? Thank you. Thank you. Always a pleasure. So remember, when the flood comes, when floods in your life come, you can always come back. There's the rainbow, renewal, reconnect, and COVID is almost over. We're going out of our ark slowly but surely. We're masked, but we're going out. And we have to fill the world with goodness and kindness, the message of the dove. But if it's a choice between a bat and an olive branch, try the olive branch first. Anyway, have a wonderful week, a good Shabbos. When you light your Shabbos candles this week, say a prayer for the world. It's the world of the week of the flood. Say a prayer that the floods of our world, because it says when you light Shabbos candles 18 minutes before sunset, the gates of heaven open. There's a few times the gates of heaven open. When a woman immerses in the mikvah and comes out, the gates of heaven open. When we light our Shabbos candles, the gates of heaven open for a few seconds when we pray. And of course, in Kippur, the gates of heaven open. There are different moments in our lives that the gates of heaven open, and you have a moment of prayer. So when you light Shabbos candles and you finish the blessing, before you uncover your eyes is a moment for prayer. The gates of heaven open. So so let's all pray together for the world. You know, they say if you pray for others, God will pray for you. If you pray, because some people say, I have enough tsaros in my life. I can't handle your tsaros. But if you pray for others, God will pray for you, because the God say, well, she's busy working on that, and who's going to do it for her? Anyway, have a wonderful Shabbos and a good week, and to be continued.
Good Shabbos, Freda.
Good Shabbos. A pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Freda. That was beautiful.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much for coming.